Hello, everyone. This is Howard Fox, and welcome back for another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series, the podcast that celebrates individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration, stewardship, conservation, access, and enjoyment of the outdoors. Mike Martin is our guest today. Mike is a certified mindful hiking guide and wilderness first responder who blends outdoor adventure with mindfulness practices to create transformative experiences in nature. He hosts the Project Mindfully Outdoors podcast and is the author of the new book, Groundhog's Wisdom, a guide to personal growth and spiritual awakening. Now, I met Mike on a website that he and I are both a part of called Podmatch, which helps to match up podcast host and guest. And when I saw Mike's profile and the idea of mindfulness and hiking and nature, it was a perfect fit for some of the work that we're currently doing in the Outdoor Adventure Series, which is to connect the idea of mental health and nature. So, Mike, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. How are you doing today?
Howard, I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited to be here today.
Fantastic. Now, for our listeners, you're going to see this on the video. Now, I have a nice Zoom background behind me. This is my time in Gulf Shores in Alabama. But Mike is sitting in a spot right now that I'm just like, I'm a little envious right now. He is a little bundled up. He's got a fire going with a little smoke. But Mike, where are you located?
So I'm in Michigan. I'm over in the downriver area, as we call it, which is close to like the Detroit River and the Huron River.
Okay. So we have to put our hands up. So I'm like, I grew up there and you grew up maybe a little below me.
Yeah,
All
probably
right.
about 40 minutes south of you.
Oh, nice. So is this where you grew up?
Yeah, this is where I was born and raised, and I enjoy the area, and I decided to stick around.
Oh, that is fantastic. And I remember going in the downriver area with my parents and sister growing up, and I loved watching the big freighters go up and down the water. And is that water behind you? Or
No, not behind me. I'm about 5 minutes away from water. It
okay,
seems like no matter where you're at in Michigan, though, you're about 20 minutes away from water, which is always
you,
fun.
you can't miss it. I agree. But yeah, I love that backyard setting. It is wonderful. So again, thank you for joining us today. And for our listeners, tell us a little bit about your background and you're obviously growing up in Michigan, but give us like a 30,000 foot view of who's Mike Martin.
So let's see. The best way to put it is Mike Martin was somebody that hid behind a mask for the majority of his life, which
Mm,
led him through a series of bad decisions, including 2 marriages.
mm,
And at the end of the second one, I found myself homeless with no identity. And I looked in my rearview mirror of my truck and decided this isn't working for me anymore.
mm.
And a couple days after that, incidents happened where I wound up trying to take my life. And
Oh,
the next morning after that event was when everything really happened, because I turned on my favorite podcast at the time, which was the Hunting Collective. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Stoic author Ryan Holiday, but he just happened to be the guest on this hunting podcast.
mm,
And he started throwing these Marcus Aurelius quotes out at me that,
oh,
yeah, as a father, it changed my life because I felt suicide was terminal and it was something that was going to happen because of all the adversities and everything going on. And when he used the quote from Marcus Aurelius that adversity is nothing more than an opportunity to showcase who you are inside, it changed my world around, because it made me realize, yeah, here I'm in this horrible position, but if I can get back on my feet, man, I would change my kids' view of the world, and I would show them something that no TV show, no book, no video game, nothing in life would be able to teach them. And from there, I started getting back on my feet. It was a slow process through talk therapy. And in one of those sessions, my therapist was talking about meditation. And I played into all the stigmas about it. I argued for an hour. And then I went out back and I picked up my crossbow and started shooting. And I'm like, man, shooting is everything that I just argued about. I'm working on my breath and slowing my thoughts down. I feel pretty good. I put that bow down and I sat there for about 5 minutes and I realized that meditation was something that was going to help me transform myself into who I am today.
Okay. I came across a Facebook meme earlier, and I haven't memorized the quote on it, but what you just shared about kind of being in a dark place, and the premise behind, and now this quote by Marcus Aurelius, this idea of the a whatever this dark place is, or whatever the shadow is that we are facing, that we can try to get rid of the shadow, which is an option, or we can embrace the shadow for what it offered and build from there and grow from there. And so in your dark place, you sounds like you have had an epiphany, a growth experience, and sounds like and you're making a difference now for not only yourself, but also for the people, and also for the people who are crossing your path. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I am curious. This is not a let's dig deep. As a coach, sometimes we go back and let's talk about some of the events in our lives, but this is not that place. But I am curious. Growing up in Michigan, and you mentioned the crossbow. I mean, hunting, though, the most I've ever hunted is I went fly fishing for the first time last year. Okay. My brother-in-law and his family are hunters, and nieces and nephew. Had you always been a part of the outdoor community, whether it is hunting, fishing, uh, or just embracing that with your family? Had you How did you get that outdoor bug in you to be to want to even to be outdoors?
So the bulk of my memories as a kid was chasing my grandfather around on all of his outdoor adventures.
Mm,
And as like went on, he ended up having a massive stroke, which I was still in my early teens. And that took me out of the outdoor experience, right? I ended up chasing music and everything like that to fill the gap. But toward the end of his life, I started getting back into getting outside, going fishing and things like that, that we used to do as kids. And in a way, I thought it was to kind of chase those memories. But looking back in hindsight now, it was really setting the stones in place for that journey that I would end up taking later on in life.
sure. By the way, I just saw a bird fly behind you, and your environment where you're sitting right now is just like so cool, Emil. So if I get a little distracted, it's because I've seen some wildlife behind you there. So
So understandable. There's actually a couple of deer that live around here too. They show up every once in a while.
I love it. I love it. So as you had these series of events, and you talked about the mask and the idea of suicide, and you had that moment of epiphany. How did that turn into, did it turn into mindfulness practices first, or because I know you're a very accomplished first responder, especially in the outdoor space. How did those two I hate to use the word lifestyle because it doesn't really, it's not, maybe it doesn't, it's not as powerful as it could be, but those are two very specific parts of our lives where we're helping other people, protecting them, saving them. But then we have this mindfulness where working on ourselves and even working on your clients, which we'll talk about in a second. When did those two worlds meet up for you?
Actually, they met up through the project because part of the goal initially was to do things in person with people.
Hmm.
Although the podcast and the digital stuff really took hold for years. And as I stepped into doing it full time, I revisited the idea of making in person experiences for people.
Hmm.
And part of that was if I was going to do it, I decided I wanted to be as safe about it and as prepared for anything that could come up. And that's where I sought out getting first responder training.
Okay. And when you began to get the training, how did you then start to create a program that you could then offer to others?
Well, the first responder part is kind of in the background as if,
Okay.
something happens, but I developed the in-person stuff in fact, I've developed this whole project out of life experiences as I've
Mm.
walked and kind of figured things out in real time. So I sought out a little bit of training through formal meditation practices and places, but I also reached into the Native American community. And I
Okay.
started sitting with fire keepers and different medicine men and storytellers and learned those arts, but I didn't want to take what their background is and just steal. So
Right.
therefore I kind of morphed things into what fit not only my practices and the way that I conduct things, but what made
Mhm.
sense within the project. Like, for example, the idea of keeping a fire as I'm sitting here talking to you, to them, it's a very spiritual. To me, it's the same thing, but it's more of a meditative practice.
Mm.
So when I look at teaching somebody how to build a fire, we actually go through step by step, gathering the wood, preparing it, getting out the flint and steel or whatever we have at hand, and going through the practice. And it slows you down and brings you present. And that's how I developed this aspect.
Okay. When you are facilitating a workshop, and I do want to also call those out before we leave today. Your backyard looks like a great place to facilitate a workshop, but where do you facilitate these workshops, and where are your clients coming from?
My clients nowadays come from all over, from every different aspect of life. And the reason for that is because of the way that I present meditation. I make it something that we all feel like we can do.
Hmm.
And it's funny because I went into a library one day to drop off some business cards and some flyers to help promote the podcast. And
Hmm.
I started talking to the librarian, and she wanted me to come in and actually do one of my first classes. So I present a lot of things indoors where I put together a makeshift fire prop and gather around, do a guided meditation and tell some stories. The other aspect of it is I actually physically get out on a trail, utilize walking meditation
Hmm.
combined with a formal sit down meditation. Through that process, I teach my people that go out with me some different skills as far as how to make fire, build shelter, keep yourself safe, all that
Hmm.
good stuff. And I use the combination of the visual, the speaking, as well as the fact base to help bring you into that area where you're facilitating your growth experience on all ends of the spectrum.
When you're facilitating the workshops, is there like in the library, I could see, yeah, Mike, come on and speak and talk about what you're doing, and maybe that's an hour, a half day. What is a typical uh, project for you when you're getting ready to enroll people in the workshop? Are you taking them out for a day? Or is this a overnighter? What's that like?
That's where I found that this is really fun because it's flexible. If there's a group setting that wants to go out for a day, like a day hike, we
Mhm.
can do that. But when I do my indoor classes, they last about an hour.
Okay.
I can also facilitate multiple days on a trail. It just depends on what that client or what that group needs at the time.
Okay. And the groups that are coming to you, or the clients, are obviously it said all walks of life from all places. Are they other? I mean, just the idea of being a first responder, whether it's fire, safety, ambulance, very high stress jobs. Okay, day in, day out. And are these typically your clients, or are we talking school teachers, doctors, nurses?
So I've had everybody from teenagers to older retired people show up for classes and for hikes. And through that, I actually just got an offer to come do a presentation at an elementary school.
Mhm.
And as fun as they are and as interesting as they can be at times, it gives me the ability to literally cater to the situation. So if you're a lawyer and you're looking for a way to relax, or you're
Mhm.
in the medical field looking for a way to decompress, there's always a way to facilitate that process for you. And it's just a matter of putting down your guard for a little bit and being vulnerable enough to reach out and say, hey, I like this idea. I really need to learn how to relax and unwind, which is one of the key components of meditation.
Sure.
So show me how to do it. And that's really where the ball starts. I know a lot of people like to try to overcomplicate things
Mhm.
within our heads, and we're like, oh, well, there's got to be this process or we got to fit into this little bill. But it's really not. It's just as simple as the backdrop that I have here sitting out in the yard. Everything is equal.
Okay. No, I love it. And part of me is thinking, man, I have got to get back to Michigan sooner. So I may have to add on an extra day in May there with you, Mike. But as as you are working to facilitate the whether it's for an hour, a half day, full day, the what are your clients leaving with? So, and I don't mean product or a flyer or here's how you do a meditation, but kind of like emotionally, mentally, what are they typically leaving with? What are they sharing with you about that?
One of the very first ones was actually this old woman that come into one of the classes at the library.
Mhm.
And when I greeted her, she's like, I don't know why I'm here, but I feel like I need this. At the end of it, at the end of the 60 minutes, she was in tears and thanked me for helping her find a way to cope with the grief of her husband's passing.
Mhm.
And ultimately, when I got started, it was the idea that when I was in that dark place, if somebody was there to sit with me, I probably wouldn't have tried to end my life that day.
Mhm.
So ultimately, that's my goal. But I see these different transformations, and I work a lot with people that are on recovery journeys.
Okay.
And we know how difficult that can be because a lot of the time it's challenging to slow your thoughts down and really grab a grip of where you're at. And I had this client show up on one of my hikes where we were going to hike for, I believe it was a 5 mile hike. Somewhere in the middle, we were going to stop for lunch and do a formal meditation. Again, at the beginning of it, there was no way I'm going to sit down and do a 20-minute meditation. I just can't
Mhm.
slow my thoughts down. And as we walked through the trail, we got to the point where we stopped for lunch. I actually had her sit for about 45 minutes, perfectly still. And that to me was really amusing and amazing because I don't emphasize the formal aspect of it.
Mhm.
I like to make it a situation where if you're moving, if you're thinking, whatever the case may be, it's okay. I really emphasize the letting go of the judgment aspect of it. And the fact that somebody who at the beginning of a adventure thought that they could never do it actually managed to sit for 45 minutes is just amazing.
I have clients that I coach, and many of them are leaders, managers. There's a lot of the professional staff as well, and occasionally some of them are going through their challenges. And I'd had a client recently, and it said, "I just need to figure out how to do this myself." And I kind of, I let it go just for a little while because I wanted them to kind of complete their what they were sharing. But I did circle back to that, and I love the important. I love the importance, but there's something important about how sharing with somebody. Yeah, you can try to do something by yourself, or you can seek out a professional that can help you. And those professionals come with different shapes and sizes and credentials. But this idea of getting out into nature, working on meditation, having a spiritual guide for that matter, and it's a lot of the work that you're doing, I think is so important. And I think in this day and age, we don't think about it, but what you're sharing, what you're offering is so very important because we all need it. I need it. Okay. I sit at a desk almost all day between podcasting and coaching, and just getting out into nature is so important, and really slowing down our thoughts, slowing down our actions just to embrace the moment. Again, you're in a beautiful place. I think it's fantastic. You can sit out there and just be quiet and listen and enjoy.
To speak to that though again real quick, because there's a trail that I love to get down to in Indiana called Turkey Run.
Hmm.
And a lot of the time when we seek out help from other people, we're really simply looking for the motivation because the tools are already there, but it's the motivation. And I say that because when you go down to Turkey Run, they've got this 5 mile hiking challenge.
Hmm.
And a lot of it is climbing the stairs. In fact, as you go across the bridge, before you get across, there's a big sign that says there's 500 stairs coming up. And a lot of the time when I'm out there with somebody, they get tired and they look at that and they go, man, I can't do that. And it's just that simple reminder that the hike all the way back to the truck is going to be just as hard. So use those skills and that drive that you have inside to put your way up the stairs. And I feel like that's a lot of what I do is I help people to uncover that tenacity inside to really climb the stairs and keep going.
Sure. No, you are spot on. I'm curious, Mike, uh, what is a typical day like for you? Is there one?
It's it varies because a couple of days a week I devote to working on the podcast. So
Mhm.
I'll get out in the woods and I'll just kind of sit with my phone. I do everything mobile and I'll write, I'll record, I'll do all that stuff. But then on days that I've got classes or a group going out, if it's something that's starting later in the day, I'll spend the morning in that area doing a lot of the same thing, just writing and meditating and getting ready. So for me, it's a lot of introspection and a lot of time spent alone, but it's something that I've learned to really embrace and really enjoy. And it comes through my work because it's almost like the idea of hooking your battery up to the charger. As it fills up, you've got the power and the energy to go through. And there's another interesting caveat to my work is a lot of it, like I mentioned, is based off of me figuring things out in real time. And I did, I started the project and talking to people through that to work on social anxiety. So being aware of the fact that those things are there, taking that time and learning how to balance everything. Once that battery's charged, it just comes through and it makes for a magical experience.
Sure. You just used the word social anxiety, and on one hand, I could see you're very comfortable in front of the camera having a conversation. And has that been for you, especially like with the podcast or being invited to speak? Is that you find that is a new muscle you're just developing, and or is it something that maybe it's been there, you had it, but you didn't really use it?
I think it's a combination of the two because before that second divorce, I felt like I interacted with people pretty well. But
Mhm.
after that divorce, there's a long stage where I avoided people as if it was a phobia.
Mhm.
And that happened during COVID. So, in order to get weed when you're living in your truck, you got to go through a drive through most of the time and interact with people. I
Right.
couldn't do that. So I would go without a lot of the time. And as I thought about it more and more, because I had a roommate and stuff. We had a house, but in the garage, I had this little itty bitty 2-man tent set up that I spent most of my time. And
Mhm.
I thought about it and I was like, one day I'd actually like to get out of this and be okay and be comfortable.
Mhm.
So I had the podcast, I had something to hold my feet to the fire, and I decided it was time to utilize that. And the more that I've utilized it, the more practice that I put in, the more that it's just become natural. And I still get moments where I feel as if it's just not going to happen or I just can't do it. But actually, I always go back to this hunting story that I experienced, which a few years ago I was out. I'm November 15th during the height of the rut. And I like to have a connection with any deer that I take. I like to have a story. So first time I see a new deer, I won't try to pull on him. And I'm standing there in this tree watching this young buck that come through, thinking about it, how old it was. And I call myself a hunter, but I'm not trying to kill this deer and get out of here and go home and warm up. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized my anxiety was really pressing on me those past couple of weeks. I projected this story on this deer. I named him Longhorn.
Hmm.
And the more that I thought about him and his position, there it is, November 15th. He's got a job to do. He's got to reproduce. But on the other hand, he's on the menu for every predator that's around. So he should be kind of cowering and hiding, right? Instead of making all these mistakes. And the reason he was doing that is because in the back of his mind, he knew if he perceived danger, he had the ability to get out of it. So it was okay for him to continue to do his job. He had confidence.
Hmm.
And when I thought about that in terms of my life, an anxiety attack, it feels like life and death, even though it's not. It makes you forget the fact that you have all the skills and all the tools to get through a situation. And it really helped me to understand. And I think that was one of my biggest rocket points to get to where I'm at today.
Really important insights because human nature, like with the deer, when they perceive a threat, they go and they can do one of two things: fight or flight. And but for humans, we can do fight or flight, or we can find a way to work through it in that moment and come out better for it. And where do we have a choice as well? When did the idea of producing the podcast, when did that come about?
So that came about almost kind of by chance because I started working with the Survey Nation years
Hmm.
ago, and they required you to have a social media presence.
Mm,
Well, everybody does awesome how to's or check out this home.
right.
Nobody tackles mental health. Being where
Mhm.
I came from, and like I mentioned, had somebody been there with me that night, I probably would have got through it. So I wanted to take up that flag. I wanted to lead that charge. And lo and behold, I started writing about the experiences with an outdoor setting and kind of threw in a little bit of philosophy. And after about 6 months of doing articles, I thought, you know what, I should do a podcast.
Yeah.
And the podcast really started to take hold, and that's really been where I've had my focus the last 5 years.
Okay. Now, I did see somewhere on the website you've got over 500 episodes now.
Yeah, I just released my 500 yesterday.
Congratulations on that. That is no small feat, and it's and most podcasts fail after about 7 or 10, 12, and so 500. That's pretty darn commitment. It's a big commitment. What's
I
your
think it's that resilience, though, that the
yeah.
fact that I want to do this. So regardless of what it takes or how many setbacks there are,
Mhm.
I'm going to do it. There's no other way.
Sure. What's your lessons or some of your lessons learned from the conversations you've had on the podcast? I mean, 500, you probably had a lot of lessons, but is there a handful maybe that just you've been keeping with you?
I'd have to go with probably to even speak further on that anxiety aspect
Hmm.
is to give myself more grace,
Hmm.
give myself more credit because I'm probably by far my hardest critic.
Hmm.
And I think when I get in those stages, I kind of play back views that I've had the opportunity to be a part of
Hmm.
and just realize that it's really not as bad as I perceive it at the moment.
Hmm. We always have a habit of using the brain as opposed to the heart, and the brain kind of makes up these stories, some of which are reality, some of which are not. But if you feel it's right, then it's great for you, and you put out a much better product. And you're doing something right if you're in at 500 episodes. So again, congratulations on that. And by the way, before we you and I head out today, I do have a another guest for you, Emmanuel Rose. He hosts the Nature Bound podcast. I don't know if you've crossed paths with him on Podmatch, but Emmanuel's kind of cool because he'll take off once a month and just get out to nature, and very much into the meditation, the the unhooking from the technology and just being in the moment. So I think you guys will have a good episode if you haven't met him yet. Tell us about this book that you just published, The Groundhog's Wisdom. How did that come about?
So Groundhog's Wisdom actually came about because in the month of February, I had a couple of classes I had to do. So I
Mhm,
needed to write a meditation for those events.
mhm,
And I just kind of kept going. I was like, in all reality, here we are, February, we celebrate Groundhog's Day. I was kind of curious and then intrigued about the groundhog as a spirit animal or as a representative of what we can actually learn about ourselves. And a lot of that really involved this idea of how he spends most of his time in his burrow. He comes out every once in a while. And in that burrow, if we were to make one for ourselves, it provides freedom for us to really inspect ourselves,
mhm.
to really look at who and what we are, come to terms with our strengths and our weaknesses. We're able to decide where we're going.
Mhm.
And ultimately, I think the biggest lesson that I learned out of putting that together that I really enjoyed sharing at that next class was just the simple reminder of the decision that we have. We have this beautiful power to make a decision, to make a choice about everything that we encounter, but taking time to do it a little bit more calculated, a little bit more deliberate, and see how it's going to speak toward not only your values, but your goals in life.
Okay, very good. And again, congratulations on the publishing this past February. And it's a great way to share with others your passion and your wisdom and insights from what you're doing. When folks come out and visit your website, projectmindfullyoutdoors.co, what's the best way to navigate the website and what can your visitors find there?
So I use my website almost as a campsite. It's the
Mhm,
base camp for everything. Anything that you're looking for, there's articles in there that are going to help you along building a meditative practice. There's links to the podcast there. There's all the social media feeds, videos. And then the other important part is it's a great way to keep track of where I'm going to be with classes and different things like that. You can reach out and actually book a digital meditation session with me because I know being here in Michigan, it's hard to get all over the place. And sometimes it's
mhm.
just more convenient for people to do things over technology. But
Okay,
we can also put together a hike or whatever the case may be. It's there to simply serve.
I love it. Well, I'm excited because to share the episode because I have a lot of outdoor peers of mine from the Outdoor Writers Association of America who are in Michigan, and and I know at some point I'm going to take you up on that thought you just shared is go on a hike with you, and even if it's again it's to see the backyard there, I think it's great.
I know it's been a while probably since you've been here, but they've been working on this beautiful trail concept called the Iron Bell Trail that
Okay,
goes from here all the way up to Iron Bell.
okay, wow.
I've been hiking that a lot lately. I think that's actually, even though it's not complete at this point, it's beautiful. It's fun.
Well, and I have to say, Michigan is such a beautiful state, and I've done podcasts with Kalamazoo, the Thumb Coast, up on the northwest. I want to say it's not Traverse City. I should know this because I did the episode with them, but Muskegon. And there's so much beauty there, and just the work that you're doing to help people. Don't think about getting out to nature just to go run a mile or 5 miles or take the dogs for a walk, but the importance of that's all important. But the idea just be in the moment and slow down, take care of yourself, the mental, emotional self, in addition to the physical. And there's so many, it's the perfect state to do that. And I don't know if I could move back to Michigan full time because my blood is kind of thinned out a little bit here in Vegas, but I certainly can do a visit. Before we head out, Mike, is there anything you'd like to share with our listeners about your journey, your experience to, it could be, again, the quote, the book, obviously, anything you'd like to leave with them about why this work that you're doing and the passion you have around it is something that it's available to the listeners if they want to have it, if they choose to kind of pursue it.
I'm going to go with the quote that actually opens up my podcast. And it's a Daniel Boone quote. The fact
Okay.
that we are never truly lost. We might get turned around in the woods for 2, 3, 7 days, but we always find our way back to where we're supposed to be. Sometimes you have to blaze a new trail in order to get there. And that, I feel, defines my journey over the past 5, 6 years now.
I love it. Thank you for that. And I'm going to actually include that in the show notes for our listeners. Mike, it's been a pleasure to get to know you. I'm so glad we crossed paths on Podmatch. I know we had a couple of hiccups along the way and along that journey, but today's the right day because you're in a beautiful setting and I've had a great week. And it's always a pleasure to chat with another podcaster, and especially someone like yourself who's so passionate, and you're on your life journey, and it's so great to kind of hear where you're at today and what you're doing. So thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely, Howard. Thanks for celebrating my work and my journey with me.
Fantastic. Listen, stay in the line. We're going to do a quick close and you and I can have a final chat. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay, folks, we have just been chatting with Mike Martin, hiking meditation guide and host of the Project Mindfully Outdoors podcast. He's the author of the new book, The Groundhog's Wisdom, A Guide to Personal Growth and Spiritual Awakening. And just what a wonderful story. I mean, we're all going through our journeys. Those journeys are not always smooth sailing. There's obstacles in the way. Some of the obstacles we can see coming, some we can't, but finding ways to navigate through those obstacles and really to make a difference for ourselves, our loved ones, and the people and community around us. It's there for us. We can do that. And I really love Mike's story and how he is applying his learning, his epiphanies, insights to really kind of help himself and also to help others through mindfulness practices. And I got to tell you, as someone who grew up in Michigan, Southeast Michigan, not far from where Mike lived, if you get out to Michigan, you listen to one of my podcasts about some of the opportunities in Michigan, make sure you do check Mike out. And hey, even if it's an hour meeting, or maybe it's going out on a trail with him, you should really consider taking advantage of that. Now, we're going to provide backlinks to Mike's website, projectmindfullyoutdoors.co, and we'll also have all of the links to Mike's social sites, including his podcast as well. As for us, you can find this episode on our website, theoutdooradventureseries.com. We are also on LinkedIn and Facebook on our Outdoor Adventure Series pages. You can find this episode up on YouTube. And of course, you can listen to the episode wherever you get your podcast from. Just search for Outdoor Adventure Series. And please share the episode with your family, your friends, anyone that you think will benefit from what Mike and I have chatted about, and especially to take advantage of the services that Mike is offering through his work. Okay, folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there and have a phenomenal day. It's Friday here in Las Vegas. It's 45 degrees. I think Mike said 45 degrees in Michigan. It looks beautiful. So I say go out there, get some fresh air, and slow down and just to be there in the moment with nature. But of course, take care of yourselves. And folks, again, we look forward to having you join us on a future episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Take care now.